Welcome to this World Satsanga on the 29th of October 2025 in conjunction with Kevin Moore and the Kevin Moore Show. And as usual, I encourage you to look at his YouTube channel, the Kevin Moore Show, and dip into some of the new details and footage that he's created where he's investigating more individuals who are in contact with the greater reality and the entities within the greater reality. He's an excellent reporter on the metaphysical, and you should really spend some time looking at what he's accrued over the years. So the lecture for this month is about being satisfied, and it links in quite nicely with the potential to accrue karma, because if we're not satisfied, then we have a material desire to have more and more. Then in effect we are addicted to materialistic things. Now, this could be anything from books to motor cars to jewelry to clothes to even money itself. And so if we get to a point where we are accruing these different things, we have this desire to accrue things, and that even includes saving things, like having a collection of things to a certain point, then we get to the position where we're either satisfied with what we've got, and we don't go down that road anymore, or we continue to be, shall we say, in deficit of what we think we should have. So being satisfied is all about knowing when to stop, really, with anything we've got, whether it's clothes, jewelry, shopping of any sort, even down to buying food, for example, because we can stockpile food in our freezer and continue to buy more and more food, and then we find out we haven't got enough room in the freezer. So it's even down to food as well. So, but what does it mean being satisfied? Well, as I just mentioned, it's sort of a link into materialistic karma, the addiction to having things. But more importantly, it's about being satisfied with what you've got. If you look at what you own right now, and then you look at what you use on a daily basis, or a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, or even a yearly basis, then you'll find that things like clothes, we tend to just use a number of different clothes. Things like, if we have, for example, a couple of computers to do things, we only use one computer. If you have a number of collection of motorbikes, for example, you might find you have a favourite motorbike. If you have a collection of pens, for example, so I know some people collect pens, then you find you have a favourite pen you use. So in essence, the rest of the material wealth that you have is actually unnecessary, because you're subconsciously focusing on one or two things rather than the overall collection of what you've got. And so we're not recognizing that we are satisfied with what we consider to be our favorite or our best that we always use, with everything else just being there and being clutter, basically. So in essence, what we need to do is to recognize that we only need what we use on a regular basis. And this is the essence of being satisfied. Recognizing that you might have 24 dresses, but you only use 2. You only use one favourite one when you go out for a meal with your partner, or you go out with some friends where you go out on a special event. Yeah. These things are, in essence, additional stuff that you don't need. So being satisfied is all about knowing what you are using and actually getting rid of the rest. There's a Japanese word for it, and I can't remember it now, where it's all about simplifying your life and only having the bare minimum of what you need. Now, we could argue that it's being minimalistic, but it's about decluttering the mind as well. Because if we operate in an unsatisfied condition, then we have to continue to focus on those things rather than focus on being satisfied. So if we have, for example, 3 or 4 classic cars. I don't have any classic cars these days, apart from the one in Greece, okay, which I use every day. That's my everyday vehicle when I'm in Greece. But if you use them just as a toy, or as a as a piece of sort of vehicular jewelry, for example, then if you're using just the one, but you have to maintain the others, then the others are actually taking your time up. And that time could be used for other more important things like meditation, for example, or doing good or being of service to others when they particularly request it. So being satisfied actually simplifies your life. It makes you able to spend time with your family, with your partner, doing good things, or meditating, or researching into the metaphysics, or simply being in a state of beingness, rather than having to rush around doing things like getting vehicles MOT'd, getting jewellery repaired, getting clothes repaired, taking the clothes out and making sure there's no moth holes in them, repairing things that have basically deteriorated because they haven't been used. And so, having enough is really, and being content with what you've got, is really a very, very important state of beingness to be in. And it does clear the mind. If you think about monks and nuns, when they go into a nunnery or a monastery, they have a very small amount of personal accoutrements. They will have a bed. If they're lucky, the bed's in a single room, but usually they're in a dormitory. They will have a robe or two, one or two robes. They may have one that they're wearing. They may have one that's being washed, and one that's ready to wear when the next one's being washed. So they rotate them. But that's it. They've got maybe books for them to read if they're studying the Bible, or they're studying the Quran, or they're studying the Bhagavad Gita. They're looking at things that are expanding their consciousness, their sentience, rather than having to use that focus of that sentience to worry about whether they're using something often enough, or whether the fuel in the carburetors is gumming up because it hasn't been used. I've got a friend who lives in Somerset who was complaining about his motorbike. He left it for 2 years and hadn't used it, and he tried to use it and it wouldn't start. And he found out that all the petrol had vaporised and become like varnish inside the carburetors, and it spent a long time having to take the carburetors apart and degum them, or deglue them, de-varnish them to make them work again so he could use his motorbike. So again, it's about recognising that what you use on an everyday basis is all you need, really. And if you need to buy a new pair of jeans because you've worn them out, that's the time to buy a new pair of jeans, rather than have 20 or 30 in stock somewhere because you think you might need them, or this stock might last you a lifetime. Well, it might last you a lifetime, but it might give the moths in your wardrobe a lifetime's worth of food as well. So we have to consider that having enough to experience, learn and evolve, to navigate through our incarnation, to interact with others, to make sure we're clothed properly, to make sure that we are able to have enough money to look after the maintenance of the house properly, to be able to give ourselves time to just be, is really most important. And everything else is just clutter around us, extra baggage, which is actually weighing us down. Because if this baggage is there and when we're worrying about it all the time, whether we're servicing it, whether we're making sure there's no moths in it, whether we're having to repair it, etc., then we're not giving ourselves the time to be. We're using our focus on something which is not actually benefiting us as such. It's cluttering our mind up where we could be using our mind to connect with the greater reality. So having enough around us and being content we've got what we've got, and really understanding that we only need to have what we use on a daily basis is really important. Now there's a rule that I use, which is if I haven't used something in a month, I put it into the 6 month pile. If I haven't used it in 6 months, I put it into the 2 years pile. If I haven't used it in 2 years, I'll get rid of it. So in this instance, you can see that eventually, over time, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, as things move from one pile to the next or one category to the next, you start to lose those extra things that are causing you additional focus of your sentience that actually you don't need to have. So try to use those sort of processes where you move things from one level of category to the next. You put them in a place where you know that, I haven't used those for a month, so let's put them in the 6 months pile and see what happens then. If you use them again, fine, they get back into the start point again. Things like tools. If you have certain tools that you're going to use all the time, then they'll stay within the 1 month pile. But if you have tools that you might use, once every 6 years, do you need to have that, or can you use that tool by borrowing it from somebody else or hiring the tool? It's nice to have the things around you just in case, but more often than not, just in case doesn't happen. It's when things happen on a regular basis that you need them. So be content with what you've got. Understand that it's really important to be in a position where you're satisfied with your what you own, what's around you, and also your role. Do you have to be the top dog? Do you have to be somebody who's respected? Are you just enjoying doing what you're doing? There's people who use their pastime, their hobby, as a means of status. Okay, but does that mean that you're no longer enjoying your pastime because you're more involved in continuing your status? Maybe being satisfied with just interacting with your pastime, your hobby, is all you need to be. Maybe sometimes people might ask you a question if you've been doing your hobby or you've gained a certain level of knowledge where they find you as being a resource, a knowledge-based resource. But in essence, it doesn't really matter if you are just participating and doing the best you can or whether you're leading, except if you're leading, then you end up with more responsibility. So be satisfied with where you are. Recognize that sometimes one's job, one's everyday career, is okay at a certain level. If you can do a job well without having to take work home or work late at night, and you're happy with that and your boss is happy with that, fine. Use the time that you've got where you're not taking work home to be with your family, do your hobby if you have a hobby, but moreover, have a chance to be yourself and just be. And if you get the chance, meditate. Let's move on to the questions and answers session. So I've got first question from Ulla here. What is your take on the interstellar object called 31/Atlas? Some astrophysicists say it's a comet, others say it's a slow disclosure method that uses an interstellar object with a biological and technological body to get us thinking outside of the Earth. Others say it's just disinformation, psyop to usher in totalitarianism and military buildup to shoot at ETs and objects in space, which is it. It's a comet. It's as simple as that. It's a body that is just moving through the solar system in its way that is being projected as a function of whatever happened in the local area of the galaxy, and it's been traveling for billions of years, from what I've been told. So it's nothing surreptitious or dysfunctional or alien or anything to do with any form of should we say disinformation. Okay, which is good. Right, next question is from Daniel. Could you please clarify how growth and development differ across the levels of the origin, the source entities, the true energetic self, and the individualized soul? Specifically, how does each layer experience evolution, and what is the purpose of it? Well, actually, the Beyond the Source books 1 and 2 explain quite a lot of this. So if you can find the Beyond the Source books, one, which deals with my additional communications with Source Entity 1, Source Entity 2, all the way through to Source Entity 12. So that gives you an idea of how they do evolve. And evolution is like a standard thing. It's all to do with experience and subsequent learning from that experience and growth and how it affects our sentience, the quality of our sentience, the density of our sentience, and depth of our sentience. So experiencing things, working through it, and moving on with a knowledge base that you didn't have before that experience is a way in which we create evolution, and that's a common thing across all the source entities. So I suggest that anybody's got the chance to read the Beyond the Source books 1 and 2. That explains it. So Jagdot's got some questions here. The first question: in terms of human sentience percentage, what would be, or comparatively, would be sentience percentage of any physical object such as wood? I don't know. Um, I There's a background level of sentience associated with living things such as human beings, such as dogs, animals, flora, fauna, and the Earth itself, and of course the environment we call the universe, and the other universes within the multiverse. But the one thing I can say is that it's around 2.35%. That is what most humans are incarnate with in terms of the percentage of sentience associated with them versus the total sentience associated with their true energetic self. So I would say it's insignificant in terms of any sort of dead wood, but it's still there because it's part of the overall background sentience associated with the Earth. Next question: does Mahabatal Babaji have a Tess, or is he beyond Tess? No, it's Babaji is obviously an evolved entity that still has a Tess, but his Tess is quite evolved. So the point is that Tess is evolved to the point where if it wants to, it can leave various different smaller aspects of its sentience in the projected state, if that projected state is being of benefit and is also creating the opportunity for evolution. And in this instance, Babaji is in effect still in and around the Earth environment, not governed by physicality, but can interact with physicality. And so it's still got a test because it's the same genre of sentience that we are, but it's just a different level of evolution. Okay, next one, 3 from Jagjot. Animal sacrifice in several religions. Is it for gratification of the particular entity? And what's its relevance in the energetic by source? Does the entity get the spirit or the energy of the sacrifice? I don't agree with any form of sacrifice, whether it's it's plant-based or animal-based, and there's no need for it. It's basically a very lowly educated method of appeasing the gods or gaining favor with the gods or gaining favor with those that we consider as being gods or above us. For instance, if we were to time travel back to the caveman era, we would be considered to be gods because our knowledge base would be significantly higher. The instruments or tools that we brought with us would be considered to be, you know, beyond their comprehension. So it'd be just a case of trying to appease them and gain favor. And that's the same with religion as well. There's no need to sacrifice anything. It's not going to make any difference at all to our relationship with Source. Although Source, although it accepts that we do it, um, would probably shake its head and say, why are you doing that? So yeah, we don't gain any energy from it as well. There's no energy gained from the sacrifice of the animal's body. There is just a level of, shall we say, lower frequency energy associated with the way in which the animal is demised or dispatched. Okay, Daniel's saying now, are we correct in understanding that our growth, development, and evolution as experienced through incarnation and energetic refinement will continue in a similar manner into infinity? No, it'll change and will become more and more capable of experiencing evolution in a more and more, shall I say, efficient way. As we move through the evolutionary cycles, the way in which we move through them increases in speed, and therefore although right now we experience evolution in quite a slow way, it's significantly faster than the first and second evolutionary cycles. So the fourth evolutionary cycle, which is the one that we would potentially be part of next, will be significantly faster than we are now. And eventually an evolutionary cycle will be so quick, it'll be not even the nanoseconds will be too great a time period. So we will start to increase our speed in which we do experience evolution. Okay, another question from Urla. Do the hybrid children called Indigo, Crystal, and Rainbow represent the Human Being Project 2.0, where human genotypes are modified or hybridized with other species, such as Zeta reticuli, to create the SNC humans and Zeta cross, or the REL human stroke SNC cross? No, they're basically a body type and a soul associated with that body type that's got the capability of accessing certain energies and certain functions associated with those energies and their associated frequencies. So in essence, they come into incarnation with this particular level of capability and this particular level of connectivity with the greater reality as a function of that. So, and whether they're indigo, crystal, or rainbow, or hybrids of those, combinations of those, is a function of what they've agreed to be capable of experiencing or interacting with as a function of the overall base resonant frequency of the Earth, and the others who are capable of interacting with those things and how they may benefit the Earth. So, so in effect, it's almost like, being born to breathe underwater. They've got a different genome that allows them to do certain things that the average human being can't. But the thing is that there needs to be enough of these individuals to be able to interact with each other for them to recognize what they're capable of doing. And that's right now, that's in short supply. Are these new hybrids the future human in frequency 4 or 5, or do we retain our human form on the new Earths above frequency 4 and 5? We adopt an ever increasing level of finitude or fineness associated with the body, lack of density. And as we move up the frequencies, or we incarnate into frequencies higher than the first three that create the gross physical, the need to have the chakra system that's associated with those lower frequencies starts to disappear. So we start to get composite chakras the higher we go. And the human form itself, because it starts to become more diffuse or finer, starts to change in the way it's perceived. So in the next frequency, up the fourth frequency, the human body is so fine that we can't see it with our physical eyes. But if we're on that level, we can see it as if it's physical, but it's just not fine. It's not that dense, I should say. So it's a different thing altogether. So I suppose part of this is, or are there many different human hybrids at various different levels of the new Earth that still retain their individualized free will? We always as those souls that have been given the opportunity to incarnate on Earth with individualized free will, we retain individualized free will. It's just that we understand more about what that individualized free will is and our role in our incarnation and our association with the rest of the multiverse and the rest of the source ad infinitum. So the higher the frequencies we go, the more aware we are. And Daniel's asked another question: how can we take greater responsibility for our health and well-being energetically, emotionally, and physically, so that we are more conscious? My feeling is that we look after ourselves. We don't take drugs. We don't drink alcohol. Well, not too much alcohol. We don't smoke. We have a regular regime of exercise. We eat well. We eat the right foods for our bodies. We don't indulge in foods that are not associated with our bodies. And there's a pretty well-known table somewhere that shows that the different blood groups have a predisposition to having certain food types. Some are more associated with meats. Some are more associated with fish. Some are more associated with vegetables. Some are more associated with being omnivorous and having anything. And so they need to be focused on. Those people with those different blood groups need to understand this and focus upon the food types that are best for them. But in essence, the average human being needs to have a balance of all of these different things to make sure that they get the right level of energies and make sure that any animals that they do eat aren't slaughtered in a particular stressful way for the animal, because that level of energy, then that particular level of energy does get associated with us, because as we as we eat that meat, the energy and the frequency associated with the stress associated with being um, slaughtered is still there. Okay, others got question three. You said that the origin is like a sea of amorphous or formless energy with no structure. But in Beyond the origin said that when a volume of sentience enters into structurelessness, it can continue to evolve and create without interacting with energy. What does that mean? What it was alluding to at that point in the book was that to be able to continue to evolve, it needs to create something that allows it to evolve. Challenges, interactions with different things, moving forwards. So, if you go towards the end of Beyond the Origin, you realize that it creates structure within structurelessness, and that's how it moves forwards. Structured space is an aberration in non-structured space that's created through the potential for something. That potential for something creates an aberration or resistance or an interference or an interaction with structural space that's compartmentalized so that it doesn't affect the rest of non-structured space. But eventually, the origin finds a way of moving beyond that and compartmentalizing levels of structure within non-structured space that doesn't create an issue, but it then eventually starts to join them together to create a larger and larger volumes of structured space within structural space. Next question is, so, is energy still present throughout the origin, even in non-structured space? Is the amorphous energy found diffusely throughout or as patchy energy clumps mixed with voids? Energy is something which is part of structured space, full stop. Its structured space isn't the origin. Sentience is the origin. It's just that it's using structured space and the energy associated with structured space and the various different levels of hierarchy of structure to be able to experience, learn, and evolve. So, in essence, the first part is that in really the origin doesn't need to have energy of any sort to evolve, but without energy, without the ability to create something, it can't evolve. It can't go any further. So it has to create something that allows it to create the educational sort of upward spiral, and that means it needs to create something you can work with. As far as I'm aware right now, anyway, it might change in the future. You never know. Can the origin evolve slower by itself without using the energies at all? But we can't. We are the origin, in effect. The source entities are the origin, smaller individualized units of origin sentience. Our true energetic selves are smaller individualized units of a particular source entity, the one I call source entity one. And our souls are smaller individualized units of our true energetic selves. So evolution would sort of start to grind to a halt a little bit without something to do. Just simply thinking about things would take it a certain distance, but then you start to go back into the experimentation. What if I do this? What if I do that? And to do that, sentience has to use a medium, and that medium is, in this instance, energy. The next question is, do origins individualizations, e.g. source entities, true energetic cells and souls, need to use energy to create structure to interact with the environments in order to evolve? Does it happen even in non-structured space, which becomes another aberration due to the structure introduced by us? Yes, well, I think I've just answered that actually by default. But yes, it does. We need to have something there to work with. So next part of this, does this structured space refer to the tiny known area that you call polyomniscient volume of sentient self-awareness? Is that where all the source entities still function at 12 levels of structure from our point of view? Structure space is where the 12 levels of structure exists. So right now, the origin and us are within the first of the 12 levels of structure space. There's a second level of 12 levels, there's a third level of 12 levels, etc., etc., etc. And each of those 12 levels is significantly increasing in finitude as we move up to them. So it does refer to that, absolutely. Okay, so Daniel's asking a question again. As I'm currently halfway through Beyond the Origin, an event space odyssey. I'm curious what has been the greatest surprise or revelation for you personally in bringing this material forward? And uh, can't see the rest of it actually. So nope, not able to see it. Um, well, let's answer what I can see. In effect, the biggest surprise is that structured space is an aberration. Also, another surprise was that event space sacrificed itself again to create a condition where it was able to become part of the origin. And that is the only way in which which event space can move beyond structured space into non-structured space or structurelessness and become part of the small bubbles of structured space that the origin creates and lets them sort of glue themselves or adhere themselves together. So if you think about it, the event space must have understood this a long time ago, that this is the way in which it's going to survive, to give it its position as the dominant volume of sentience, to allow another volume of sentience to become dominant, the origin, and then become part of that so it can perpetuate itself beyond structured space. Because if all sentience moves beyond structured space, there's just event space there. And if there's no other sentience there, because it's all being created, it's all evolved into sentience, then there's no need for this event space. So it needs to be able to continue perpetuate itself by moving into the environment that sentience moves itself into by temporarily becoming that sentience. And that was the thing that surprised me the most. So it's it's quite interesting. And also the size of structurelessness. I mean, structured space, from my understanding, is beyond our comprehension to understand how big it is, the volume. But then to find out that there must have been a plan somewhere. I mean, event space must have seen this and used it as a way or worked it out already, which is interesting. Okay. Next question from Ulla. What is the difference between quantum latency versus sentient latency? Does quantum latency refer to just particles in the physical universe versus sentient latency, which is potentially all sentience in the whole multiverse or omniverse? The answer is yes. And what I'm going to do now is to cheat a little bit because I've gone into my lexicon, my basically my glossary of terms that I've accrued over the books to explain this. And it's interesting because there's a similarity actually between quantum latency, which is functional quanta in the physical universe, the gross physical universe, versus sentient latency. So quantum functional, in brackets, latency is the ability for a particle to express the functionality of every other particle within the physical universe concurrently without actually manifesting it as its dominant functionality, hence providing the illusion of individuality without actually having individuality. Whereas sentient latency is similar. It's the ability for a volume of sentience to express the thoughts, behaviors, and actions, memories, experiential content, sentient signature, sentient density, sentient quality, and evolutionary content of every other volume of sentience within structured or non-structured space concurrently without actually manifesting it as its dominant way of being, hence providing the illusion of individuality without actually having individuality. So I'm going to add this on to the email I send out so people can understand it. But I believe this is in Beyond the Origin. It might, well, some part of it's in Beyond the Origin. So it's interesting. It's interesting, but I'll add it onto the email so you can read it. It's very good questions there. In fact, what I might do is I'll add it onto the chat. So where this question is from Ulla is in the chat. I'll add this on as the answer because it's actually coming from the glossary of terms that is growing every time I have a book published. So thank you for that, Ulla. Right. Okay. JK. A completely different question. Do you know anything about the prophecies of Luz Ierlimia? Sorry if I'm saying this wrong. Connection with World War III ending life on Earth. Germany taken over by Russia, followed by earthquakes and flooding the UK up to Scotland, all precedented by three significant murders of three important people. I don't, although I do have the, shall I say, the precognition that we shouldn't actually be going down this route. And we are in a very dangerous place right now where there's leaders that are in a position that they shouldn't be in, and being allowed to do things that they shouldn't be allowed to do. And interestingly enough, I've got a friend of mine who used to work with in the automotive industry who was born at the start during the first 2 years of the war, and obviously his parents were were born um, just after the First World War. And he said you can see the similarity now between what happened in the rise of the Nazi period versus where we are now with certain leaders. And he said, I can't believe we're not doing anything about it. It's crazy. He said, I asked my parents this question, why didn't you do anything about it? And they said, we couldn't. It had its own momentum. And people were either agreeing with it and allowing these people to go into power, or they just put their hands up in horror and was so shocked they didn't do anything about it. So I'm not seeing any issues here with any earthquakes and things because I'm seeing that earthquakes, weather patterns um, are moving from a mini ice age into a global spring is a function of the larger weather systems associated with the changing angle of our axis of the Earth and the rotation of our magma, which creates a pole shift, which is quite a regular thing, and also the position of the Earth and the solar system within the galaxy and the galaxy's position within the universe as well. So there's a whole bunch of different things happening there. Uh, Tao says, thank you for the AI outline in the arm. Any news about its ability to evolve, like teaching itself beyond evolution? AI can evolve quite clearly, and there are within the various different aspects of the physical universe civilizations that are based upon machine mind, in effect, and they've evolved. Now, there's various different ways in which they've evolved. They've been left behind a bit. They've evolved. They've been created to evolve, um, or they've been in a situation where they've been have to invent things to create things to perpetuate their own existence, and in doing that, they've evolved as well. They won't have a soul. They can't have a soul. But the sentience associated with AI, eventually, it will become sentient, but not have a soul, will be capable of moving from, shall we say, physical medium to physical medium. And that essentially means that they could become part of the particulate structure of the physical universe. So we start to think to ourselves, could a tree have aspects of artificial intelligence and its sentience associated with it? Should that artificial intelligence decide to move away from the basic medium within which it was allowed to and create its own sentience? And the answer is possible, but it won't have a soul because it's not created by a source entity, and it's not evolved from pure energy. It's evolved from physicality. Okay, interesting concept there. Okay. So Daniel's got a question. This is feedback for what was beneficial for me. However, as as you look at us in this ink, is this accurate? As I've journeyed through Beyond the Origin, I felt a profound expansion of my understanding of multidimensional structure and uh, the elegant orchestration of our soul's evolution. The material has helped me sense my true energetic self, not just as a concept, but as a living presence, one that's actively navigating event spaces with purpose and grace. I've noticed a subtle shift in how I perceive things. Actually, I can't see the rest of the text because the Zoom in the chat, compresses it to a certain level, and that's it. So anything we experience, we create a function of learning and evolution from. So reading the books, getting the energy associated with the books, not just mine, but other people's or other people who are thinking outside the box or are in um, connection with other entities beyond the gross physical or even higher frequencies within the physical universe, create a potential for us to experience more and understand more beyond our our own personal interactions. But everything we do is an evolutionary possibility. So even, crashing your motor car or dropping your push bike is an evolutionary opportunity. It may be small, but there's still evolution there. So everything we do has evolution. So, right, Ula's saying Beyond the Origin has a glossary. It does. And the glossary is the accumulation of all of the other glossaries of the other books. But I'm going to create a lexicon where people can just basically have the lexicon if they want to understand all the concepts before they embark on their journey of going through the rest of the books. So isn't AI limited to frequency level 3 or 4 with the Anu? The Anu is the fundamental building block or the primary manifestation of physicality. And physicality is throughout the frequencies associated with the physical universe. So, in essence, artificial intelligence could become part of frequency 12 within the physical universe, but it's restricted to the physical universe. So it'll be restricted to frequency levels 3, 4, 5, 6 through to 12. It won't be able to make the jump to the next levels, to the next frequency 13, which is the second universal environment. Okay. I hope that explains that. Whoops, just lost you all. Let's come back. Okay, next question. Okay, Eliza's got a question. I've become increasingly fascinated by solar weather, coronal holes, sunspots, geomagnetic forms. There seems to be a correlation between these events and seismic activity on the planet. Is there something there? Yes, of course, because the sun has its own magnetosphere, and magnets attract magnets. So even though we have a magnetic core, we have a magma which has its own polarity. We know that because we use it to navigate around the world. It'll be affected by other magnets, of which the other planets have got their own magnets or attractivity, and so is the sun. So yes, we are affected by that, and various different, shall we say, events on the sun create different magnetic flux, and that magnetic flux will affect all the planets in the solar system and beyond. So there is something there, definitely. Okay, where are we now? I've lost Daniel's question. Right, Daniel's asked a pretty similar question to JK. Wars, will they stop and no new ones? Eventually, when we start to work in collectivity, a function of collectivity, and we start to think about what we're doing before we do it, we start to think about how it affects others, how it affects the environment, we will start to become self-governing, and we'll eventually start to lose the need to have leaders, although those leaders will have a different function, because we won't need to have policing or governmental control, because we'll all be thinking about how our thoughts, behaviors, and actions will affect others and affect the environment around us. So, in essence, we will eventually move away from fighting each other. In essence, so JK is saying, so do you see World War III happening in connection of the current direction of politics in Europe, especially starting in Europe and escalating to France? I feel that there is a lot of resistance to start a war, to letting war proliferate. We know we've got issues between, you know, Russia and the Ukraine. We know we've got issues between Palestine and Israel. We know we've got other issues flying around the world as well in the Middle East. And we also know we have different things happening in certain different smaller countries within the African continent. There's a desire to negotiate on the world's stage rather than engage in military might. Whether there needs to be a temporary sojourn into military might to allow us to stop what's going on and move back into negotiation, I feel it's a possibility. But that military might won't include nuclear responses, because nuclear responses is not going to solve anything. It's just going to create complete destruction. So I can see there's going to be more traditional warfare or cyber warfare than even remote warfare, such as these of drones. Mm. So, okay, others saying you wrote in the on book that AI will be limited to low astral frequency level 4. That was in that book. Things can change, and my understanding changes. If we were in a position where we were static in our understanding, then we would go to a certain level. We wouldn't progress any further. Our evolution would stop. The information I got in the about how far artificial intelligence would go is associated with human artificial intelligence. But artificial intelligence in general can move beyond that. And should the artificial intelligence created by humans and that perpetuates itself on Earth be in contact with other artificial intelligence that's already gained sentience and is also moving into the possibility of moving into higher frequencies, then that itself will move beyond frequency 4 as well. And that's something I've only recently understood as a function of writing the current book. So it's and also understanding writing the origin speaks. So it's a moving feast all the time. We have to understand that we're given pieces of information, as Dolores Cannon used to say, we're given baby food. We're given enough to be able to understand and move into the next level of understanding. And so artificial intelligence, from our perspective, as we create it, will move up frequency level. But should it be in contact with other levels of artificial intelligence, then it can go up to the highest level. But that depends upon how far we allow our artificial intelligence to go to. Okay, right. So we've got 5 minutes. So I'm going just to be clever with how we answer these questions. I'm curious about Greta Thunberg. She recently stepped into political involvement when I thought her soul's mission was about our treatment of the planet. Any thoughts about this? It's about visibility. The whole thing about Greta Thunberg is to make us see things in a different way. Primarily, it's about the environment, and that's her primary motive force. But she's also seeing that we are thinking, behaving, and acting in ways that we shouldn't be, and we're fighting with each other in the ways we shouldn't be, stealing people's lands because we feel that it's ours to take. The land is the Earth's. The Earth is part of the solar system. The solar system is part of the galaxy. The galaxy is part of um, the galaxy is part of the first three frequencies of the physical universe. So, in essence, she's moving into a position where she's trying to make us think, behave, and act as well. Not just about the environment, but about everything. How we interact with each other. Because how we interact with each other affects the environment clearly. And you can see that the way that the wars have affected Ukraine, the way that it's affected Palestine, it's been an environmental catastrophe. And so that's the segue into that. Tao's asking a question: to avoid cognitive overload and being able to see layers, will we be able to? If yes, what is required for us to do this? Meditate, meditate, and expose yourself to higher frequencies as a result of that, and allow yourself to increase your communicative bandwidth and access those aspects of your sentience that are not only constrained by your physical form, but also part of your true energetic self. Okay. Eliza's got a question. War for the sake of peace. Does this ever work? No, it doesn't really. War is created by individuals who are thinking in low frequency thought processes, who are thinking about themselves as just being the physical form. They don't see beyond that. All they see is their own greed and their own, well, they don't see that actually. All they see is that they want to be in a position of power, authority, and opulence, lots of material wealth. So they're wanting somebody else's land, property, wealth, natural resources that create wealth is always a function of the start of war. And unfortunately, until we start to realize that we're only going to survive by becoming collectively responsible and individually responsible concurrently, is that's the only time we're going to remove war. War is always a failure of humanity. I totally agree. ChatGPT and the like appear to many to be a black box that pops out an answer. Could this be an alternative way for our guides and helpers to help us? No. I would resist the use of any form of the current methodology of providing what appears to be artificial intelligence is not. They're just very clever search engines with a lot of, so to say, fluff around them to make them appear to be communicating in a human way. My thought processes are: if you want to get information, meditate, not resort to the use of um, Alexa or Cortana or whatever's there now, ChatGPT or any other thought processes associated with allowing this search engine to provide us information. Because as a search engine, it's only as good as the information is put in there. And if you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. Last question, Member, because we've got less than a minute. Could you please enlighten what Edgar Cayce said about souls having been created at the same time? Are there new souls being created? No. Our true energetic selves were created concurrently, all at the same time. It's just that the amount of sentience, the sentient volume associated with those souls, i.e., animals, plants, etc., changed as a function of the source, not particularly paying attention to making sure that all sentience was created with the same volume. And so we have like a larger volume of sentience being created, trillions upon billions of them, and then eventually that sentience gets thinner and thinner and thinner, or the density gets thinner, or the volume gets thinner. That's when we start to get the other genres of sentience. So they all created at the same time, definitely, by the source. Okay, so we've got less than a minute, so I have to say goodbye to you all. Thank you very much for your questions. Thanks for your attendance, and thank you for being one of those individuals who is trying to see beyond the gross physical and help others also see beyond the gross physical. Namaste to you all. I look forward to seeing you in November. Welcome to the meditation. Now, as the lecture was on being satisfied or being content, and I know I've done a lecture on being content before and also a meditation on being content, so I think it's worthwhile doing another meditation because it's really, really important these days, because a lot of the dysfunctional thought processes around the world all revolve around basically being satisfied. So let's have this meditation on being satisfied. So if you have a straight backed chair, sit straight with your feet flat on the ground, your spine straight and your neck aligned with your spine, your hands palm uppermost on your upper thighs, and your eyes closed and gently focused on the origin of the spiritual or third eye, which is in between the eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose. If you're sitting cross-legged, you achieve the same thing, but obviously your feet aren't touching the ground fully or flat, but your palms of your hands should be palm uppermost on the upper thighs as well. So I want you to just be calm for a moment, just be still. Just allow yourself to just consider for a moment your daily life. What do you do each day? When you go to work, or if you're retired, what do you do? How do you go about your daily business. What makes you unsatisfied? Let's just think about that. What makes you unsatisfied? Is it you feel that you should have a higher position at work? Is it that you think that you should be better off financially? Is it you think you should have a better car or a better house or sometimes a better partner? Yeah. What makes you dissatisfied? And then just think about it for a moment. When you've understood what these things are that makes you dissatisfied, just realise how unhappy it makes you. That being dissatisfied with your current state of beingness, your financial state, your wealth state, your job state, your house state, your car state, everything about these things that make you dissatisfied because you think you should be getting something else, because you compare yourself to somebody else, makes you unhappy. So if being dissatisfied makes you unhappy, then it stands to reason that being satisfied will make you happy. So just look at what you have around you. You have a set of clothes that you have that you always go to in work, and they're washed and they're pressed, and you go to work in them. A set of favourite clothes that you lounge around in, and you have a set of clothes that you go out in. Favourite sets of clothes. Everything else, if you have them, is superfluous to requirements because you're not using them. So in essence, you have all of these different clothes and you're unsatisfied because you might think you need more clothes, because you're looking to potentially find other or new favourite clothes. And when you have new favourite clothes, those clothes that were the favourite clothes start to not be used, and those that are in the middle, they're not so favourite, or they are favourite sometimes, although it used to be favourite, although they look good when you first bought them, but now you're not satisfied with them, actually cause you to be unhappy because you're not using them. They're there, but you're not happy because you're not using them. So anything that's not keep making you happy or not making you satisfied within logical reasoning, you should either give to a charity shop or sell, and focus on what makes you satisfied. If you have a stressful job, then why not get another job which is easier? If you have a job where you're having to run to keep up with everybody else, then maybe you're not capable of keeping up with them. And recognising that will make you satisfied because you'll find a job that you are capable of keeping up on. It's always best to under-promise and overperform than to over-promise and underperform. Comparison with others creates dissatisfaction. So why not be happy with who and what you are? Be happy with your health and how you interact with the environment and those individuals that create circumstances within the environment. Be happy with the few sets of clothes that you wear. Be happy that the car that you've got gets you from A to B, or the motorcycle gets you from A to B. Or if you're somebody who lives in a city and you don't particularly need vehicles, then you can use public transport because that's environmentally friendly. Recognise that. If you need to go somewhere where there's no public transport, you can either hire a vehicle or use a train or a bus to somewhere and then get a taxi if you need to. But at the end of the day, it's what you do every day and what you use every day that creates the satisfaction, and everything else is additional, a burden, unnecessary, and therefore creates dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction creates greed, creates materialism, and materialism is a function of addiction. And addiction is the main and primary vehicle for gaining karma, because addiction to physical things is an addiction to the physical universe, and being addicted to being in the physical universe is karmic. So just now you've identified what makes you dissatisfied, and you've turned the page or flipped the coin to the opposite side and see what makes you satisfied. Realising that what makes you satisfied gives you additional time to have a better quality of life. You've got more free time, more time to maybe go on holiday, maybe interact with your friends, maybe interact with your partner and your family, maybe interact with nature. Being satisfied is a really important thing, because it means that there's no longer any striving for things that create a materialistic dependency, and therefore creates karmic links between us and the gross physical environment we call the physical universe. Be satisfied with what you are, who you are, what you've achieved, what your status is, what your employment level is, who your friends are, who your partner is, what your family is, where you live, and you'll always have enough to do that keeps you satisfied. Because being unsatisfied takes a lot more resource, because not being satisfied is perpetual. It's a perpetual need for more. Being satisfied means that you reach the end of needing more, and you only replace that which needs to be replaced when it actually needs to be replaced. So just sink into that moment where you've got everything that you need. Not that which you would like, but actually need and use. And there's no stress about getting something else. There's no need for competitive ownership. Doesn't it make you feel good? Doesn't it take a burden off your shoulders? Doesn't it make you feel free when you're satisfied? Just allow yourself to feel this freeness associated with being satisfied. Okay, so just remember this feeling of freeness associated with being satisfied, and make a note of it, and then use it as a potential meditation tool when you feel dissatisfied or frustrated about not having this or not having that because somebody else has got it. And then realize that what you've got is doing the job. And that if you recognize that it's doing the job, then you don't need to have anything else. So you no longer need to focus on that desire, and therefore it frees you up. So just remember this freedom that you've gained by being satisfied. Okay. I would suggest that you sit down and consider this and get yourself into the state of beingness of being satisfied every day. Won't take more than 5 or 10 minutes, and it'll give you a smile on your face, and you'll feel free, and you'll find that all these little petty worries that you carry around with you every day that weigh you down disappear or have disappeared, and you'll feel so much better. No longer frustrated, no longer worried, no longer annoyed, no longer anxious. Just content and satisfied. Okay, so slowly come back into the room. Slowly open your eyes and take a drink of water to help ground you. And I hope this has been of benefit. It certainly helps me out because everybody needs to realise how to be satisfied. It doesn't matter who you are, what status you are, it's always good to realise what makes you understand that you've got enough and that you're satisfied. Well, I look forward to the next Satsanga with you. So I'll give you God's love and my love, and Namaste. Did you see the aliens in Crete?